Welcome to the latest episode of First Impressions, where I try out brand new video games so you can see whether you think you like them before you ever have to spend a penny on them. And I am super excited about today's game because Hell Is Us has just released a demo. I can't even remember when I saw this game. It was at like a Summer Games Fest or something similar to that, one of those events, and I was intrigued. The music that you're hearing now is actually from the game, and not only am I intrigued, I'm a little bit scared now. This is eerie. Hell Is Us is described as, if war is the closest we get to hell on Earth, it's because Earth harbors the worst of demons, humankind. That's us, guys. We're the worst of demons. In an isolated country ravaged by infighting, discover the secrets of your past and deal with the repercussions of a mysterious calamity. I am not a horror guy. Dead Space nearly made me poop my pants. So if we're going along those lines, I might find this difficult. But we're going to jump in, see what the game is like. And in the last 5 minutes, I will give you a rundown of the things I liked and I didn't like, and whether I recommend you give the game a go. Honestly, this is a free demo, so you may as well. I'll put the link down to that below. If you haven't already, do hit the subscribe and like button, because it takes about 2 seconds, really helps the channel, and means you're going to keep up to date with the latest video game content. Enough of me yapping on. I know we don't like yappers. Let's get into the game. Hell Is Us. Let's play. Thankfully, this game is a work of fiction. I was worried. I was worried for a moment that it is real. Oh, warning. Our game has no map, no markers indicating where people or things are, where to go next, or who to talk to. We will never tell you precisely what must be done or how to do it. To thrive in Hell Is Us, you will need to pay attention to your environment, listen, and be vigilant. I may struggle with this. I like to have my hand held. Save games from the demo will not be compatible with a full retail version of Hell Is Us. That's fine. For the best experience, we recommend playing Hell Is Us with the controller. Done, done, done. As always, I'm playing on my PC with the PlayStation DualSense controller. It's the only way to play, really. We strongly recommend playing through the tutorials activated for your first playthrough. Would you like to be shown the tutorials? Let's give that a go. They highly recommend it, so I think it's, you know, if they're highly recommending it, we got to do it. If you're curious, I'm playing on an RTX 4070 Super with a Ryzen 9 7950X3D and 64 gig of DDR5 RAM, and I have the settings on Ultra for the demo. Graphically, ooh, it's looking very, very crisp. What a throw on this guy. Look at the hair. Very detailed, very cinematic, very eerie,
it's a true serum. Very
dark.
It's still experimental, hence the polygraph.
Who's this guy?
I would have tortured you, but my employers insist I use their concoction.
He has got at least a double chin. Maybe a quadruple chin.
Brick road. Well, apparently needs more time.
Beautiful lighting as well.
Going through your system, curious about something. Why did you do it?
What's happened?
My shoes would have done the same. I think you overestimate human beings.
It's given
I don't think you realize the time,
Orson Welles'
money,
Big Brother vibes.
Resources that went into this operation. You pissed off the wrong people. But
you can always tell with like texture on the skin, smoke in the air, lighting, the quality of graphics.
And dabbled in criminal activities. You managed to pull yourself together.
These are really spot on.
Soldier. After decades of trying to get back into Hadia, well, you
a lot of
take matters into your own hands.
A lot of villains wear the bolo tie, don't they? What's all that about? Wow. What just happened to him? Oh, it's a truth serum taking effect, I think.
Oh, it seems we're ready.
Considering he's got such a a manky face, I would describe it as. He's got very clean and white and straight teeth.
UN peacekeepers who were deployed inside Hadia. It backfired. When the paperwork cleared, Hadia's civil war was in full swing and the peacekeepers pulled out. I reported to my new unit, stole some gear, and crossed the mountains.
When you take truth serum, can you just not speak, or does it kind of entice you to speak?
Fuck. My parents. I wanted to find them. I needed to confront them.
How did you know your parents were still in Hadia?
Quite an interesting concept with the game to have no markers, no pointers, no quest log, just truly leaving you to stumble around. That might be a problem for me. And I imagine in terms of difficulty settings and accessibility, maybe that will be a problem for people.
In the back of a truck, gave me a necklace.
I'm not sure.
She didn't say anything?
She told me. Never come back.
The risk is obviously that you get, if you get trapped in a specific section, or if it becomes too difficult to find out where or what you should be, where you should be going, what you should be doing, is that you abandon the game. That's the risk. That's my initial thought. Maybe there will be, if I'm focused, maybe there will be enough information in the environment, but that's the fine line they're going to have to tread, the developers of this. But I have to say, lighting and graphics so far, absolutely up there with the best of what's been released so far this year. And there's been some absolute bangers released this year. It's such a great year for games. He's changed his gear. Here we go. We're in the game now. We're in control. Wow. Let's talk about this then. Sometimes when I play a demo, depending on how long the demo is, I won't necessarily play all of the demo for the purpose of my first impressions. I tend to play an hour or so. But this game really caught me. Really hooked me in. I was worried initially because it says right at the beginning of the game, basically there's no hand-holding. We're not going to give you any markers on the map. We're not going to tell you where to go. We're not going to tell you what items you need to use. We're not going to have to tell you what to collect. And it lets you know that you need to listen to your environment. You need to listen to the conversations. And you need to kind of establish what your path through the game is going to be based on those conversations, the environment. So, for example, early on, we go down into the basement, talk to the old man, and he says to follow the wind chimes. Then you have to listen for the wind chimes to follow the wind chimes to find the path. Now, I think this is described as semi-open world, really, because there is a clear path and narrative through the game, but there's also lots to find off the beaten path. So, I feel like I could replay this and I would find more by not following that direct narrative, but kind of wandering off into the woods, wandering off into different doors. There is things to find. There's lots of little nooks and crannies. There's lots of hidden features in here, which is really great. I was worried that because of that no hand-holding, that there's a risk that you get lost in the game, or that there are elements that are just not clear enough that mean you kind of not really sure what you should be doing and where you should be going. And that's always a big danger point in a game, because that's the point at which you go, you know what, I'm going to walk away from this. However, there are other games that are not at all similar to this that I've played, where there are no instructions at all. Things like Limbo, for example, where you just get thrown into this game and you pretty much have to figure out everything on the way. This actually gives you more guidance than I thought it would give you. Although there isn't, any markers on the map, you do have a compass. and it forces you to really focus in and listen and be engaged with the game, as opposed to being disturbed by the things or looking at your phone or whatever. You have to be really engaged, because if you miss that dialogue, if you miss what's happening in cutscenes, if you are not completely aware of what's happening in your environment, then yes, you will really get lost. But as far as, you know, playing this game, it does help you through. There are kind of hints and tips on how you use certain things, but there's nothing overtly saying this is your mission log, this is what you're aiming to do, this is where you're going. Let's talk about the graphics, because there are a few games that have come out this year where I've been absolutely, it's blown my mind like how beautiful they are. And they're not always like hyper realistic, but just beautiful. This game is both of those things. The graphics are hyper realistic. They're really clean, really sharp, really detailed, but at the same time it has that beauty to it. It's really beautifully lit, very cinematic, you know, very, very well done. Environment wise, I think the only thing that I've kind of pulled out, and this is a demo, so the main things may change, is the kind of splashes of water, the kind of spray of water looked a bit kind of tessellated, looked a bit pixely, looked a bit kind of static. The actual water itself and the environment graphics, everything else, though, looked absolutely phenomenal. I always love it when you have, you know, leaves falling, you know, that kind of give the environment, the aesthetic where things are happening in the environment and it feels like it's in real time. It feels like it's not pre-planned. It feels like it's, you know, almost natural. And I think everything from the big spotlights pointing at you often, the, you know, heavy shadows, really beautifully lit, really beautifully cinematic environments that just look phenomenal. And the character animations, character graphics are really spot on. And it's not, you know, it's not always the guy at the beginning wearing the hat with the big double, triple, quadruple chin, you know, is obviously not it doesn't look like a natural human character, but just the details on them, the scarring, the kind of wrinkles, the folds, just all look impeccable. The textures of the outfits, just the clarity of everything is absolutely wonderful. And there are things in there that I think some of the top games have done, things like the footprints in the mud, the things that are tiny details but make a huge difference to the overall look and feel of the game. Voice acting wise, I think it's superb. There's even with like these what appear to be kind of small NPC characters in the game, like the old man in the cellar, just this rich, really kind of well done, beautifully acted voice acting. Every character I've seen or interacted with so far, the voice acting has been absolutely spot on. You know, with the main character, you actually don't hear that much from the main character, but you know, in the cutscene, the great voice acting, and just in general with the NPCs, and that's sometimes what happens in game is your kind of core cast is absolutely superb, but then some of the smaller NPC characters get a bit messed up. I mean, that was really prevalent in something like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, where you had a barmaid that was changed her accent every other line, but then the main cast was absolutely beautifully voice acted. This seems to have real consistency throughout the demo, regardless of who it is that you're talking to. Battle mechanics and the unfolding of how you get into that, because at the start you're just a guy with a gun and then you kind of transform into this, I don't know, you pick up the sword and it kind of transforms you into this other character, and you get all of these new weapons. And you only ever play with the sword. The battle mechanics are fairly standard, but it looks like there's a lot of expansion that can happen there. There's the kind of L2 special ability stuff that I haven't really even touched yet. There's been nothing in those slots, so you can see that there's going to be room for expansion, and the battle mechanics will get more complex and more interesting as you go. But from what I've seen so far, it's fairly simple: light attack, charged heavy attack, block, parry, all the stuff that you would expect from a game where you're in that kind of melee combat. You have the added layer of the drone on top of that, who can distract enemy, which adds this kind of strategic layer to when you're dealing with multiple enemies. You really have to think about right, who am I going to distract? Who am I going to fight? You know, what's the best way to do this? And then the drone itself has expansion slots as well, where you can reduce the cooldown. There's so many layers that I think are yet to be revealed with this game in terms of how far it's going to go and almost what the build of your character is going to be, what your style is going to be. And I think my prediction is that you're going to be able to kind of have different types of builds depending on what your style of gameplay is. You know, whether you want to run and gun, whether you want to be a bit more stealthy, whether you want to, whatever that is. I'm sure there's going to be expansions that fit with all of those different play styles. The combat is great. I'd love to see more of the stuff that we saw in the cutscene, the kind of slow-mo speed ramping stuff that we saw in the first cutscene before you pick up the sword. You know, I thought that was really beautiful. It's a third-person game, which is great for me because I much prefer third-person than first-person, generally speaking. And you know, you really get to experience the environment and the character beautifully throughout the game. In terms of the enemies, they are horrific. You know, they kind of got that David Lynch-esque mouth with a kind of black and white striped mouth, and they're quite haunting in the same way that the sound of the horses in Lord of the Rings is really terrifying. The sound of these enemies is terrifying as well, and it's another aspect to the environment where you can kind of hear them more than see them approaching. You can kind of predict when enemies are going to be coming up through the sound of the environment, which is a really nice touch, because I was slightly worried that there's going to be huge jump scares in this game because it feels very tense. It has that kind of Dead Space type tenseness to it. Maybe not as intense as Dead Space, but the music, the lighting, the environment gives it that Dead Space feel where you'll kind of have a level of anxiety at all times. But it's so well done that you can just get a hint that there's enemies around the corner, so there's nothing ever surprises you. There's one small kind of, you open a door and there's someone behind it, and I'm sure there'll be more of that, and maybe it'll become more intense as you play through the main game. Whilst we're talking about the sound, we have to talk about the music and the environment sounds. As I said, the music gives that kind of eerie, vacant, Dead Space vibe, and seamlessly weaves in and out depending on what you're doing within an environment. So you have this general background music that is running throughout the game that gives this mystery, this eeriness, this kind of contemplative type music throughout, and then really ramps up as you go into battle scenes. But there never feels like it's like a big cut in the music. They've done it really well where you just kind of weave into that, and it works really beautifully. And they combine that music with the soundscaping that they've done, whether that's, you know, the sound of the wind through the trees, whether it's the hints of the enemies' sounds. You know, there's all these different engine sounds. There's all these kind of things happening, many of which I think you would experience in a horror game. You know, engine sounds, engines running, but just a consistent mood changes as you move through the environment. The music's really beautiful, and when you add that layer of soundscaping on top of it, it just brings it all together incredibly well. In terms of the actual gameplay mechanics in general, again, I'll say I was worried that I might be in a position where I was lost or I couldn't figure out what to do. I'm sure the puzzles will get kind of iteratively more difficult, but generally speaking, I think in games like this, what happens is you start with easier puzzles and they kind of teach you and train you for the more difficult ones down the line, and they get kind of gradually more challenging as you go through. I was quite impressed with myself, you know, that I had figured the puzzles out in the way that I did, and that I grasped what was happening so quickly. There's a lot of kind of locks to open that require you to either have medallions or keys, that kind of thing, but then there's also kind of combination locks. I especially love the one where just after you get the drone and you have to scan the signs in a variety of rooms, and the wording on the signs implies a narrative. So there's three locks there's three combinations that you have to unlock, and the order of the rooms and the order of the narrative of those lines, they kind of fit together in an order. And I was so pleased with myself that I got that on the first go. So sometimes, you know, you're looking for imagery on the walls and there's little hints of it, you know. The first kind of puzzle we had to solve was a piece of rock broken on the floor with a symbol on it, and then there was 2 others that were actually still attached to where they should be, and you kind of had to put those together and unlock those. The second one was scanning various signs in a language you don't understand that you can't actually access until you get the drone. There's also lots of back and forth. You know, there's these little, not Easter eggs, you know, what would you call them? These little side missions, I guess, like when you gain the watch that has the old man's in the basement surname on it as one of his son's watches. You kind of build that story out. You don't have to take that watch back to him, but if you take it back to him, you know, you get a kind of good deed, little tick, little trophy there. You know, that's a nice little thing that you have these little side missions. So I get the feeling throughout the game that you could just mainline main story if you can assess what that is as you're going through the game, or you can go and do these little side missions and these little good deeds. And when you do that, when you come back to an NPC that you've spoken to previously, they have more information to give you. They have more to talk about. So for example, the guy in the basement, you go off, you find the watch, you encounter these new enemies that you've never seen before, these creatures, you come back and then you can ask him about the creatures, and that adds to your kind of data bank of knowledge that you have, which is all stored within this kind of retro data pad. So there's lots to love about this. In fact, I don't really know if there's anything bad to say about this game. The graphics, the sound, the story, you know, that's all unfolding, and it's really, really well done. It's really beautiful. There is an obvious mystery to the game. You don't really know why you're where you are. You don't really know what you're trying to do. You just have these vague hints and little kind of tips to what's happened in the past, and you're moving forward despite not really knowing what it is that you're trying to achieve. And I think the game is all the better for that. I love being handheld through a game, by the way. I love having my hand held and moving through an environment and knowing exactly where I'm going and what I'm going to do. I love a game that's on rails, and I have a little bit of fear for games that aren't on rails. But this is done so well in terms of the guidance and the hints and the information that I've not yet felt lost. I can imagine if I was distracted it would be more difficult, but like I said, it forces you to engage with the game. I just cannot recommend this enough. I'm so excited to be able to play the full game when it comes out, and this demo is really well. I really didn't want it to end. The end of this demo felt like the end of a great book, and you know there's going to be a sequel released, but you have to wait for it. It's like the end of a great series, and you go, oh, I'm going to have to wait. Thankfully, I think it's September this comes out. We don't have to wait too long. It's too long for me. I really didn't want that demo to end. I wanted to continue on. I just wanted to play it. I just wanted to play it. So we've gone through the whole demo. I loved it. I think it's great. I really recommend you play the demo. If you don't have access to the demo, I will release the full demo playthrough so you guys can see it. But wishlist this game, because it's truly... There's been so many games this year that have come out where I've been like, Game of the Year contender, Game of the Year contender. And I think this might be up there as well. I think this might be up there. We'll see how the story rolls out. We'll see how the main game rolls out. But based on what I can see here in this demo, absolutely superb. If you haven't already, do hit the subscribe button and the like button below. I'd really love to have you as part of the community. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe here on YouTube, and there's lots more of this kind of content coming. If you want to support from a monetary perspective, you can go to ko-feed.com/charmthegamer, where you get early access to content and a variety of other benefits, or you can click the join button below on the YouTube channel. But don't feel the need to do that. A lovely like and subscribe and a comment on what you thought of the game below is more than enough. I appreciate you guys. I hope you enjoyed this game, and I'll see you on the next one.